Your suffering is not noble. Your struggle is not sacred. Your pain is not proof that you're a good person who deserves sympathy. In fact, your attachment to being a victim is the very thing that's keeping you powerless, broke, and alone. You've been taught that complaining about your problems makes you compassionate, that blaming others makes you righteous, that staying stuck makes you relatable. But what if I told you that 95% of your problems exist because you refuse to take responsibility for creating them? What if your financial struggles, your relationship failures, and your health issues are not happening to you, but are actually being created by you through your unconscious patterns of thought and emotion? The moment you stop being proud of your problems and start taking ownership of your power, everything changes. There's a single moment that separates those who live extraordinary lives from those who settle for ordinary ones. It's not talent, it's not luck, it's not having the right connections or being born into the right family. It's the moment when you stop making excuses and start making changes. It's the moment when you stop being a victim of your life and start being the architect of your destiny. Most people will never experience this moment because they're too busy explaining why their life isn't working instead of taking action to make it work. You see, there's a moment in every person's life when they have a choice. It's the moment when you stop saying this is happening to me and start saying this is happening through me. It's the moment when your victim story dies and your creator story is born. And here's what's fascinating about this moment. It doesn't require permission from anyone else. It doesn't require perfect conditions. It doesn't require waiting for the right time. It only requires one thing, your decision to stop living in reaction and start living in creation. Most people spend their entire lives waiting for their circumstances to change so they can feel different. They think, when I get the promotion, then I'll feel confident. When I find the right relationship, then I'll feel loved. When I have enough money, then I'll feel secure. But what if I told you that this is completely backwards? What if the real truth is that you have to feel confident to get the promotion, feel loved to attract the right relationship, and feel secure to create abundance? This is where the magic of responsibility begins. The moment you take full responsibility for your life, you're no longer at the mercy of your past conditioning. You're no longer a victim of your circumstances. You're no longer waiting for someone else to change so you can feel better. You become the author of your own story, the director of your own movie, the creator of your own reality. But let me be clear about something. Taking responsibility doesn't mean blaming yourself for everything that's ever happened to you. That's just another form of victimhood. Taking responsibility means recognizing that regardless of what happened in your past, you have the power to choose your response in this moment. You have the power to choose your thoughts, your emotions, your actions, and your future. Your brain doesn't know the difference between an experience you're having in your external environment and an experience you're creating in your internal environment through thought alone. Think about that for a moment. When you remember a painful experience from your past, your body releases the same stress chemicals it released during the original event. When you worry about something that might happen in the future, your body prepares for danger as if that future scenario is happening right now. This means that most people are living in a constant state of stress, not because of what's actually happening to them in the present moment, but because of the stories they're telling themselves about their past and their future. They're addicted to the familiar chemical cocktail of stress hormones that their thoughts produce. They're literally addicted to their own victimhood. But here's the incredible thing about your brain. It's neuroplastic. This means it can change throughout your entire life. Every time you think a new thought, feel a new emotion, or take a new action, you're literally rewiring your neural networks. You're creating new pathways and weakening old ones. You have the ability to change your brain. And when you change your brain, you change your life. When you truly understand this, everything changes. You realize that you're not stuck with the personality you developed in your past. You're not condemned to repeat the same patterns forever. You're not a victim of your genes, your upbringing, or your circumstances. You are a powerful creator with the ability to reinvent yourself in every moment. The moment you take full responsibility is the moment you step into your power as a conscious creator. It's the moment you stop being at the effect of your life and start being at the cause of your life. It's the moment you realize that you are not your thoughts. You are the thinker of your thoughts. You are not your emotions. You are the one who chooses your emotional state. You are not your circumstances. You are the one who gives meaning to your circumstances. And when you stop being the circumstance, you are the understate. You're not the upstate. You're not the downstate. When you stop, this shift from victim to creator happens in an instant, but it requires tremendous courage. Why? Because taking responsibility means giving up the stories that have defined you. It means releasing the excuses that have kept you safe. It means admitting that if you created your current reality, you have the power to create a different one. And that's both terrifying and exhilarating. Most people resist this level of responsibility because it's easier to blame someone or something else for their problems. Blame feels good in the short term because it releases you from having to do anything about your situation. If it's your boss's fault, your parents' fault, the economy's fault, or society's fault, then you're off the hook. You can stay exactly where you are and feel justified about it, but blame is a drug that numbs you to your own power. Every time you blame someone or something else for your problems, you give away your power to change those problems. You make yourself dependent on someone or something outside of you for your happiness, your success, and your fulfillment. You become a victim of your own excuses. The truth is, your brain is designed to keep you safe, not to make you happy. Your unconscious mind is constantly scanning your environment for threats, and it interprets anything unfamiliar as potentially dangerous. This includes new thoughts, new emotions, and new behaviors. So when you try to change, your brain immediately sends alarm signals throughout your body trying to pull you back to the familiar. Even if the familiar is uncomfortable or painful, this is why change feels so hard. It's not that you're weak or lacking willpower. It's that you're working against millions of years of evolutionary programming that's designed to keep you alive, not to help you thrive. But when you understand this, you can work with your brain instead of against it. Every time you choose responsibility over blame, you're strengthening the neural networks associated with personal power. Every time you choose creation over reaction, you're building new pathways in your brain. Every time you choose to respond consciously instead of reacting unconsciously, you're literally rewiring yourself to become a more empowered version of yourself. And the quantum field of infinite possibilities exists all around you in every moment. But most people can't access it because they're stuck in their familiar patterns of thinking, feeling, and acting. They're living from their past instead of creating from their future. They're trying to create a new life with the same old thoughts, emotions, and behaviors that created their old life. When you take full responsibility, you step into the quantum field of infinite possibilities. You recognize that every moment contains unlimited potential outcomes. And your consciousness is what collapses those possibilities into your reality. You become a conscious participant in the creation of your life instead of an unconscious victim of your circumstances. This is not positive thinking. This is not pretending that everything is perfect. This is recognizing the fundamental truth about how reality works. You are not separate from your environment. You are in constant interaction with it. Your thoughts, emotions, and actions are continuously influencing the quantum field around you. And the quantum field is continuously responding to your state of being. When you truly take responsibility, you realize that you are both the observer and the observed, the creator and the created, the cause and the effect. You are not a separate entity trying to manipulate a hostile universe. You are an inseparable part of a friendly universe that is always responding to your authentic state of being. This is the moment when victim consciousness transforms into creator consciousness. This is the moment when you stop living in survival mode and start living in creation mode. This is the moment when you realize that you have never been powerless. You have only been unconscious of your power. The moment you take full responsibility is the moment you take full control. Not control over other people or external circumstances, but control over your own thoughts, emotions, actions, and responses. And when you have that kind of control, when you have that kind of mastery over your inner world, your outer world begins to reflect that mastery back to you. Now, let me tell you what happens inside your brain the moment you make this shift from victim to creator. Your brain has been running the same programs for years, maybe decades. These programs were installed when you were young, when you didn't have the conscious awareness to choose what beliefs to accept and what beliefs to reject. Your brain simply downloaded everything from your environment, your parents' fears, your teacher's limitations, your culture's conditioning, and it's been running these programs automatically ever since. But here's what most people don't understand. These programs are not you. They're just software that was installed in your hardware. And just like you can update the software on your computer, you can update the software in your brain. The moment you become conscious of these unconscious programs, you gain the power to change them. When you live in victim consciousness, your brain is constantly scanning for threats. Your amygdala, that ancient alarm system in your brain, is hyperactive. It's always looking for reasons to feel unsafe, reasons to feel like you don't have control, reasons to prove that life is happening to you instead of through you. And when your amygdala is activated, it hijacks your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for creative thinking, problem solving, and conscious choice. This is why people who live in victim consciousness can't see solutions. Their brains are literally wired to see problems. They're addicted to the chemistry of stress, and their bodies have become so familiar with cortisol and adrenaline that these stress hormones feel normal. In fact, when these people try to feel calm and peaceful, it feels uncomfortable because their bodies are not familiar with the chemistry of peace. But the moment you take responsibility, something magical happens in your brain. Your prefrontal cortex comes online. This is the most evolved part of your brain, the part that makes you human. When your prefrontal cortex is active, you can observe your thoughts instead of being controlled by them. You can choose your emotions instead of being a victim of them. You can respond consciously instead of reacting unconsciously. Scientific research shows us that meditation, the practice of becoming conscious of your unconscious thoughts and feelings, literally changes the structure of your brain. When you meditate regularly, you strengthen the neural networks associated with awareness, compassion, and self-regulation. You weaken the neural networks associated with stress, anxiety, and reactive behavior. You're literally rewiring your brain to support your highest potential instead of your lowest fears. But here's where it gets really interesting. When you combine clear intention with elevated emotion, when you think greater thoughts and feel greater feelings, you change your state of being. And when you change your state of being, you change your electromagnetic signature. Your heart, which has a magnetic field that extends several feet beyond your body, begins to broadcast a different signal into the quantum field. Most people try to create change from a state of lack, fear, or desperation. They're trying to get something they don't have, trying to become someone they're not, trying to fix something they think is broken. But creation doesn't work that way. You can't create abundance from a feeling of scarcity. You can't create love from a feeling of failure. The quantum field responds to who you're being, not what you're wanting. It responds to your state of consciousness, not your wishful thinking. When you take full responsibility for your life, you're no longer trying to get something from the field. You're contributing something to the field. You're no longer approaching life from a place of need. You're approaching life from a place of wholeness. This is why gratitude is so powerful. When you feel grateful for something that hasn't happened yet, when you feel thankful for the life you're creating instead of complaining about the life you have, you're signaling to the quantum field that you already possess what you desire. You're thinking and feeling from your future instead of from your past. Your brain cannot tell the difference between an experience you're having in your external world and an experience you're imagining in your internal world. When you mentally rehearse your future, when you think and feel as if your desired outcome has already happened, your brain begins to lay down new neural networks as if the experience has already occurred. You're literally installing the neurological hardware for your future before it happens. This is not visualization. This is mental rehearsal with emotional intensity. Athletes have been using this technique for decades. They rehearse their performance over and over in their minds, and their brains create the neural networks necessary for peak performance. When they actually compete, their bodies know exactly what to do because they've already done it thousands of times in their minds. This same principle applies to any area of your life. When you take responsibility for creating your future instead of being a victim of your past, you begin to mentally and emotionally rehearse the person you want to become. You start thinking the thoughts that person would think, feeling the emotions that person would take. But here's the key. You have to do this before you have any evidence in your external world that it's working. You have to believe in your vision more than you believe in your current circumstances. You have to trust the process more than you trust your past experience. You have to have faith in your future more than you have certainty about your present. This requires breaking the addiction to your familiar self. Most people are addicted to their own personality, their own set of thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. They've been thinking the same thoughts, feeling the same emotions, and doing the same things for so long that these patterns feel like who they are. But your personality is not your destiny. Your personality is just a set of habits that you've practiced so many times that they become automatic. When you decide to create a new future, you have to be willing to become uncomfortable. You have to be willing to think new thoughts that feel unfamiliar. You have to be willing to feel new emotions that feel foreign. You have to be willing to take new actions that feel awkward. This discomfort is not a sign that something is wrong. It's a sign that something is changing. Your brain will resist this change because it interprets anything unfamiliar as potentially dangerous. It will try to talk you out of your vision. It will remind you of all the times you've failed before. It will point out all the reasons why your dreams are impossible. But this resistance is not the voice of truth. It's the voice of your past conditioning trying to keep you safe in your familiar limitations. The moment you understand this, you can work with your brain instead of against it. You can recognize these fearful thoughts as just old programs running, not as accurate assessments of your potential. You can observe these thoughts without being controlled by them. You can thank your brain for trying to keep you safe while still choosing to move forward toward your vision. This is what it means to become greater than your environment. Most people are controlled by their environment. They let the conditions in their external world determine their internal state. If things are going well, they feel good. If things are going poorly, they feel bad. They're giving their power away to their circumstances. But when you take full responsibility, you become greater than your environment. You choose your internal state regardless of your external conditions. You maintain your vision regardless of what's happening around you. You stay committed to your future regardless of evidence from your past. You become the cause of your experience. This shift in consciousness creates a completely different electromagnetic signature. Instead of broadcasting the frequency of need, lack, and desperation, you begin to broadcast the frequency of wholeness, abundance, and gratitude. Instead of trying to get something from life, you begin to give something to life. Instead of being a victim of the field, you become a conscious contributor to the field. When you understand that your consciousness is continuously influencing the quantum field around you, everything changes. You realize that you're not a powerless victim of random events. You're a powerful creator whose thoughts, emotions, and intentions are continuously shaping your reality. You're not separate from your environment. You're in constant energetic communication with it. This is the neuroscience of personal power. This is how responsibility becomes control. This is how taking ownership of your inner world transforms your outer world. When you change your brain, you change your life. When you change your energy, you change your destiny. When you change your consciousness, you change your reality. So, how do you actually make this transformation happen in your daily life? How do you catch yourself in the act of being unconscious and shift into conscious creation? This is where the rubber meets the road. This is where theory becomes practice. This is where knowledge becomes wisdom. The first step is developing what I call witness consciousness. You have to become aware that you are not your thoughts. You are the observer of your thoughts. You are not your emotions. You are the one who experiences your emotions. You are not your reactions. You are the one who can choose your responses. This sounds simple, but it requires constant vigilance because your unconscious programs are always trying to take control. Throughout your day, you're going to have thousands of opportunities to practice this awareness. Someone cuts you off in traffic, there's an opportunity. Your boss criticizes your work, there's an opportunity. Your partner says something that triggers you, there's an opportunity. Your bank account is lower than you'd like, there's an opportunity. Every single moment offers you the choice between unconscious reaction and conscious response. Most people miss these opportunities because they're not paying attention. They're on autopilot, letting their familiar programs run the show. They react to traffic the same way they always have. They respond to criticism the same way they always have. They handle stress the same way they always have. They're living the same day over and over again and calling it a life. But when you develop witness consciousness, you start to catch yourself in these moments. You notice when you're about to slip into an old pattern. You feel the familiar emotion rising up, and instead of being consumed by it, you observe it. You hear the familiar thought starting to form. And instead of believing it automatically, you question it. You sense the familiar reaction wanting to take over. And instead of surrendering to it, you pause. This pause is everything. In that space between stimulus and response lies your power to choose. In that moment of awareness, you have access to infinite possibilities. In that instant of consciousness, you can choose to respond from your future self instead of reacting from your past conditioning. So I think it may be very helpful is to say, but let me warn you, this is not easy work. Your brain is going to resist this level of consciousness because it threatens the familiar programs that have been running your life. Your body is going to resist this level of awareness because it's addicted to the familiar chemistry of your automatic reactions. Your environment is going to resist this level of change because the people around you are comfortable with the familiar version of you. This resistance is not a sign that you're doing something wrong. This resistance is a sign that you're doing something right. This resistance is your old self trying to survive. Your familiar patterns trying to maintain themselves. Your past conditioning trying to keep you exactly where you are. The moment you feel this resistance, celebrate it because it means you're breaking through to a new level of consciousness. When you stay conscious in the face of this resistance, something miraculous happens. You begin to create new neural pathways in your brain. Every time you choose awareness over unconsciousness, every time you choose response over reaction, every time you choose creation over victimhood, you're literally rewiring your nervous system. You're weakening the old patterns and strengthening new ones, but you have to be consistent. You can't meditate for 20 minutes in the morning and then spend the rest of your day unconscious. You can't have one moment of awareness and then return to autopilot for the next 24 hours. Transformation requires sustained practice. It requires showing up for yourself again and again, moment after moment, choice after choice. This is why most people don't change. They want transformation, but they're not willing to do the daily work of consciousness. They want to feel different, but they're not willing to think different thoughts. They want their circumstances to change, but they're not willing to change their familiar patterns of thinking, feeling, and acting. Real change happens in the uncomfortable zone between your familiar past and your unknown future. In this zone, nothing feels certain. Nothing feels safe. Nothing feels familiar. Your brain is sending alarm signals throughout your body, trying to pull you back to the known. Your emotions are fluctuating wildly as your chemistry tries to find its new balance. Your old identity is dying, and your new identity hasn't been born yet. This is the neuroplasticity window, the space where real change becomes possible. When you're uncomfortable, when you're uncertain, when you're in the unknown, your brain is most open to creating new connections. The neural networks that have been running your life automatically for years suddenly become malleable again. You have access to parts of your brain that have been dormant. You have the opportunity to install completely new patterns of thinking, feeling, and being. Most people run from this discomfort. They interpret these feelings as evidence that something is wrong, that they should go back to their familiar patterns, that change isn't meant for them. But this discomfort is actually evidence that something is right. It's evidence that you're breaking through your old limitations. It's evidence that you're becoming someone new. When you understand this, you can embrace the discomfort instead of avoiding it. You can stay present with the uncertainty instead of running back to the familiar. You can remain conscious in the unknown instead of falling back into unconscious patterns. You can use the energy of discomfort as fuel for your transformation instead of as an excuse to quit. This is where daily practice becomes essential. Every morning before your day begins, before your environment starts demanding your attention, before your problem starts screaming for solutions, you need time to connect with your future self. You need time to rehearse the person you're becoming. You need time to install the thoughts, emotions, and intentions that will guide your day. This morning practice is not just meditation. It's mental and emotional rehearsal for your new life. You're not just sitting there hoping for change. You're actively creating the neural networks that will support that change. You're not just thinking positive thoughts. You're feeling the emotions of your future self. You're not just visualizing your goals. You're embodying the energy of their fulfillment. When you do this consistently, something amazing begins to happen. The person you rehearse in the morning starts to show up in your day. The thoughts you practice in meditation start to arise spontaneously in your daily life. The emotions you cultivate in silence start to flow naturally in your interactions. The intentions you set in stillness start to manifest in your actions. But you also need an evening practice, a time to review your day and consolidate your growth. Every evening you need to ask yourself, where did I slip back into old patterns? Where did I choose consciousness over unconsciousness? Where did I react from my past instead of responding from my future? Where did I remember who I'm becoming and where did I forget? This evening review is not about judging yourself or feeling guilty about your mistakes. It's about learning from your experiences and strengthening your commitment to growth. Every time you acknowledge where you fell back into old patterns, you're building the awareness that will help you catch those patterns sooner next time. Every time you celebrate where you stayed conscious, you're reinforcing the neural networks that support your transformation. The key is to approach this process with patience and compassion for yourself. You're literally rewiring patterns that have been running for decades. You're changing programs that were installed when you were too young to choose them consciously. You're transforming conditioning that feels like part of your identity. This doesn't happen overnight, but it does happen. With consistent practice, with sustained awareness, with patient persistence, you will notice that your automatic responses begin to change. You'll find yourself naturally choosing thoughts that support your vision instead of thoughts that reinforce your limitations. You'll discover emotions arising that align with your future, instead of emotions that keep you stuck in your past. You'll take actions that move you toward your goals instead of actions that keep you trapped in familiar patterns. This is the transformation process. This is how you move from unconscious reaction to conscious creation. This is how you take responsibility for your thoughts, your emotions, your actions in your life. This is how you become the conscious architect of your own destiny instead of the unconscious victim of your own conditioning. The moment you commit to this process, the moment you decide to show up for yourself day after day, moment after moment, choice after choice, you begin to take control of your life in a way that most people never experience. You begin to live from intention instead of from habit. You begin to create from consciousness instead of from conditioning. You begin to respond from your future instead of reacting from your past. Now we come to the most challenging aspect of taking full responsibility, mastering your emotional states. Most people think emotions just happen to them. They believe they're victims of their feelings, prisoners of their moods, hostages to their emotional reactions. But the truth is, emotions are not something that happen to you. Emotions are something you create, and if you create them, you can master them. Your emotions are the language your body uses to communicate with your consciousness. When you feel fear, your body is telling you that it perceives a threat. When you feel anger, your body is telling you that it perceives an injustice. When you feel sadness, your body is telling you that it perceives a loss. But here's what most people don't understand. These perceptions are not facts. They're interpretations based on your past conditioning, your learned patterns, your familiar beliefs about yourself and the world. This means that you have far more control over your emotional states than you've been led to believe. You're not at the mercy of your feelings. You're the creator of your feelings. You're not a victim of your moods. You're the architect of your moods. You're not powerless against your emotions. You have the ability to choose which emotions you cultivate and which emotions you release. But mastering your emotions doesn't mean suppressing them or pretending they don't exist. It means understanding them, learning from them, and using them as information rather than being controlled by them. When you feel a challenging emotion arise, instead of immediately reacting to it or running from it, you can observe it with curiosity. You can ask yourself, what is this emotion trying to tell me? What thought created this feeling? What belief is driving this reaction? Most people live their entire lives being controlled by their environment. When the stock market goes up, they feel good. When the stock market goes down, they feel bad. When people are nice to them, they feel worthy. When people are critical of them, they feel worthless. When things go according to plan, they feel confident. When things don't go according to plan, they feel anxious. They've given their power away to their circumstances. But when you take full responsibility for your emotional states, you become greater than your environment. You choose how you feel regardless of what's happening around you. You maintain your inner peace regardless of outer chaos. You stay connected to your vision regardless of temporary setbacks. You respond from your center regardless of external pressures. This doesn't mean you become emotionally numb or that you stop caring about what happens in your life. It means you stop giving your circumstances the power to determine your internal state. It means you recognize that your emotions are your responsibility, not your environment's responsibility. It means you understand that how you feel is a choice, not a reaction. The key to this mastery lies in understanding the relationship between your thoughts and your emotions. Every emotion you feel is created by a thought you're thinking. Change the thought and you change the emotion. But most people have this backwards. They try to change how they feel without changing how they think. They want to feel confident while thinking thoughts of inadequacy. They want to feel abundant while thinking thoughts of scarcity. They want to feel loved while thinking thoughts of unworthiness. And this is why positive affirmations often don't work. People repeat words they don't believe while feeling emotions that contradict those words. Their heart and their mind are not in coherence. Their thoughts and their feelings are not aligned. They're sending mixed signals to the quantum field, and the field responds to the dominant signal, which is usually the feeling, not the words. True emotional mastery comes when you can generate elevated emotions regardless of your external circumstances. when you can feel grateful before you have something to be grateful for, when you can feel abundant before you have evidence of abundance, when you can feel loved before someone loves you, when you can feel successful before you achieve success. This is how you signal to the quantum field who you are becoming instead of who you have been. Your heart is not just a pump that circulates blood through your body. Your heart is an intelligent organ with over 40,000 neurons, more neurons than many organs in your body. Your heart has its own nervous system, and it sends more signals to your brain than your brain sends to your heart. When your heart is in coherence, when your heart rhythm is smooth and orderly, it sends coherent signals to your brain that enhance your cognitive function, your creativity, and your intuition. But when your heart is in incoherence, when your heart rhythm is chaotic and disordered due to stress, frustration, or anxiety, it sends incoherent signals to your brain that impair your ability to think clearly, solve problems, and access your higher faculties. This is why people make poor decisions when they're emotionally dysregulated. Their hearts are sending chaotic signals to their brains, making it impossible to access their wisdom. The electromagnetic field generated by your heart is 5,000 times stronger than the electromagnetic field generated by your brain. This field extends several feet beyond your physical body, and it's constantly interacting with the fields of other people and the environment around you. When you're in a coherent heart state, when you're feeling emotions like gratitude, compassion, care, or appreciation, your heart generates a coherent electromagnetic field that not only benefits you, but influences everyone around you. This is why some people can walk into a room and immediately lift the energy of everyone present, while others can walk into the same room and bring the energy down. It's not about their words or their actions. It's about their electromagnetic signature. It's about the quality of energy they're broadcasting from their heart. When you master your emotional states, you become one of those people who elevate the energy wherever you go. You become a source of inspiration, not because you're trying to inspire others, but because you're living from an inspired state of being. You become a beacon of possibility, not because you're preaching about possibilities, but because you're embodying those possibilities. But how do you cultivate these elevated emotional states when life keeps throwing challenges at you? How do you maintain coherence when everything around you seems chaotic? How do you stay in your heart when your mind is telling you to worry, fear, and doubt? The answer lies in understanding that every challenge is an opportunity to practice emotional mastery. Every difficult situation is a chance to choose your response instead of falling into automatic reaction. Every moment of adversity is an invitation to demonstrate your commitment to your future self instead of defaulting to your past conditioning. When you encounter a challenge, instead of immediately going into survival mode, you can pause and ask yourself, how would the person I'm becoming handle this situation? What would my future self think about this problem? How would someone who has already achieved my goals respond to this setback? Then you can choose to think those thoughts, feel those emotions, and take those actions even though you don't have evidence yet that you are that person. This is what it means to live from the end result. This is what it means to be your future self now. This is what it means to embody the solution instead of focusing on the problem. You're not pretending that challenges don't exist. You're choosing to respond to those challenges from your highest potential instead of from your lowest fears. Over time, as you practice this consistently, you'll notice that your emotional baseline begins to shift. Things that used to upset you no longer have the same power over you. Situations that used to trigger automatic reactions now become opportunities for conscious response. People who used to drain your energy now become neutral to you, and some may even be positively influenced by your presence. You'll also notice that you start to attract different experiences into your life. When you consistently broadcast coherent, elevated emotions, the quantum field responds by bringing you experiences that match that energy. You'll find yourself in the right place at the right time more often. You'll meet people who support your vision. You'll discover opportunities that align with your goals. You'll experience what some people call luck, but you'll know it's not luck. It's the natural result of maintaining a coherent electromagnetic signature. This is the mastery of emotional states. This is how you become greater than your environment. This is how you take responsibility for your energy and use that energy to create the life you truly want. When you master your emotions, you master your life. When you control your internal state, you influence your external world. When you choose your feelings, you choose your future. The moment you decide to take full responsibility for your life is just the beginning. The real magic happens in the sustained practice of mastery. Showing up for yourself day after day, choice after choice, moment after moment, even when you don't feel like it, especially when you don't feel like it. Because transformation is not a one-time event. It's a daily discipline that becomes a way of life. Most people approach change with the mentality of a sprinter. They get excited. They make dramatic commitments. They push hard for a few days or weeks, and then they burn out and return to their old patterns. But lasting transformation requires the mentality of a marathon runner. It requires pacing yourself, conserving your energy, and staying committed to the process even when the initial excitement wears off. The truth is, small daily practices create massive long-term results. It's not about making huge changes overnight. It's about making tiny improvements consistently over time. It's about choosing to meditate for 10 minutes every morning instead of scrolling through your phone. It's about choosing to ask yourself empowering questions instead of letting your mind run wild with worry. It's about choosing to respond consciously instead of reacting unconsciously, one situation at a time. These small choices might seem insignificant in the moment, but they compound over time. Every time you choose awareness over unconsciousness, you're making a deposit in your transformation account. Every time you choose response over reaction, you're building the muscle of conscious choice. Every time you choose creation over victimhood, you're strengthening the neural networks that support your highest potential. But here's what happens that most people don't expect. As you continue to grow and evolve, you'll start to impact the people around you. Not because you're trying to change them, not because you're preaching to them about personal development, but simply because you're showing up differently in the world. When you take full responsibility for your life, you give others permission to do the same. When you stop being a victim of your circumstances, you inspire others to stop being victims of theirs. This influence happens at an energetic level before it happens at a behavioral level. Remember, your heart generates an electromagnetic field that extends several feet beyond your body. When you're consistently in coherent, elevated emotional states, that field influences everyone you encounter. You become a walking example of what's possible when someone commits to their own transformation. People will notice that something has changed about you. Even if they can't put their finger on what it is, they'll be drawn to your presence because you're no longer broadcasting the frequency of need, desperation, or victimhood. Instead, you're broadcasting the frequency of wholeness, empowerment, and possibility. You're not trying to get something from the world. But let me be clear about something. This process never ends. Personal development is not a destination you arrive at where you can finally relax and coast. It's an infinite game where the purpose is not to win, but to keep playing at higher and higher levels. Every breakthrough you experience reveals new possibilities for growth. Every level of mastery you achieve opens doors to even greater levels of mastery. This is actually the beauty of the human experience. You are not a fixed entity with predetermined limitations. You are a dynamic, evolving consciousness with unlimited potential for growth. Every day you have the opportunity to become a more refined version of yourself. Every moment you have the chance to choose thoughts, emotions, and actions that align with your highest vision for your life. As you continue this practice over months and years, you'll notice that your relationship with challenge completely transforms. Problems that used to devastate you now become interesting puzzles to solve. Setbacks that used to derail you now become valuable feedback that helps you refine your approach. Criticism that used to crush you now becomes useful information that helps you grow. You'll realize that there is no such thing as failure. There are only results and learning opportunities. Every experience, whether you label it positive or negative, contains valuable information that can help you become more of who you're meant to be. You'll develop what I call infinite resilience, the ability to bounce back from any setback stronger and wiser than before. This resilience doesn't come from being tough or hard. It comes from being flexible and teachable. It comes from understanding that your current circumstances are not your final destination. It comes from knowing that every challenge is temporary, but the growth you gain from navigating that challenge is permanent. As you master this process, you will also discover that your definition of success begins to evolve. You'll realize that true success is not about accumulating things or achieving recognition. It's about becoming the fullest expression of your authentic self. It's about living in alignment with your deepest values and highest vision. It's about contributing to something greater than yourself while honoring your own growth and evolution. You'll find that the goals you once thought were so important pale in comparison to the person you've become in pursuit of those goals. You'll understand that the real treasure was never the destination, it was always the transformation that happened along the journey. You'll recognize that every challenge you faced, every obstacle you overcame, every moment you chose growth over comfort was preparing you for this moment of authentic self-mastery. The ripple effects of your transformation will extend far beyond your personal life. When you live from this place of responsibility and empowerment, you become a force for positive change in your family, your community, and the world. You raise the consciousness of everyone you encounter simply by being who you've become. You inspire others to take responsibility for their own lives by demonstrating what's possible when someone commits to their own growth. Think about the people who have influenced you the most in your life. Chances are they weren't the ones who told you what to do or tried to fix your problems. They were the ones who lived their own lives with such authenticity and empowerment that they showed you what was possible for your own life. They were the ones who took full responsibility for their own experience, and in doing so, gave you permission to do the same. This is the legacy you create when you commit to the sustained practice of mastery. This is the gift you give to future generations when you break the cycle of unconscious living in your own life. This is the contribution you make to the evolution of human consciousness. When you choose to grow instead of staying stuck. When you choose to create instead of complaining. When you choose to take responsibility instead of placing blame. Every moment you spend in meditation, every time you catch yourself in an unconscious pattern, every choice you make to respond instead of react, every decision to think from your future instead of your past, all of these moments matter. All of these choices count. All of these practices are contributing to your transformation and to the transformation of the world. The moment you took full responsibility was the moment you took full control. But the sustained practice of that responsibility is what transforms that control into mastery. That mastery into wisdom, and that wisdom into service. You become living proof that transformation is possible. You become walking evidence that people can change. You become breathing inspiration that ordinary individuals can create extraordinary lives. This is your calling. This is your purpose. This is your contribution to the world. Not to be perfect, but to be authentic. Not to have all the answers, but to keep asking better questions. Not to never face challenges, but to face them with consciousness and courage. Not to avoid discomfort, but to use discomfort as fuel for your evolution. The world needs people who have done the work of taking responsibility for their own lives. The world needs individuals who have learned to master their thoughts, emotions, and actions. The world needs human beings who have remembered their power to create, to choose, to evolve, and to inspire others to do the same. So here you stand at this crossroads. You have a choice to make right now in this very moment. You can close your eyes to what you've learned here today and return to the familiar comfort of your old patterns, your old excuses, your old limitations. You can go back to being a victim of your circumstances, a prisoner of your past, a slave to your unconscious programs. That's one choice, or you can step into the unknown territory of your unlimited potential. You can decide that today is the day you stop making excuses and start making changes. You can choose to become the conscious creator of your own destiny instead of the unconscious victim of your own conditioning. The moment you take full responsibility is the moment you take full control, not someday, not when conditions are perfect, not when you feel ready. Right now, this moment, this choice, this decision to stop waiting for your life to change and start changing your life. Your transformation begins with a single thought. I am responsible for my life and I have the power to change it. Your evolution starts with a single feeling. I am worthy of the life I desire and I am committed to creating it. Your new reality emerges from a single action, choosing consciousness over unconsciousness, response over reaction, creation over victimhood. The world is waiting for the person you're becoming. Your future self is calling you forward. Your highest potential is ready to be expressed. The only question that remains is this: will you answer the